I'm not going there to die. I'm going to find out if I'm really alive.
What's going on, everybody? JJ Wilson is here, and welcome to another Starwind Corner episode 35. Now this one, this one is going to be a doozy, man, because there's been a lot of news this week, really a lot of negative news, from celebrity deaths to war stories from Ukraine, Ethiopia, Syria, and then you got the start of the Winter Olympics, and that's gotten political, which I'm not even going to get into. And also rising crime, once again, just a lot of crazy stories I've been hearing, just not in my area, but like all over the country of America. It's been discouraging like crazy. But this one is going to be more about sports. I don't do too many sports topics on the channel because I know it's kind of more centered towards gaming and anime, but this one was a bit of an eyebrower, I have to admit. First off, shout out to DHR2 for talking about it in full length. The Miami Dolphins controversy between their former head coach Brian Flores and the owner of the team, Stephen Ross. Right now, Brian Flores, he kind of was groomed under the Bill Belichick system of football. And interestingly enough, this man, he got the job in the NFL very young. Like, he was hired something like a special teams assistant coach at the age of 22. Now, he was a college football player. I forget the school exactly where he played at, but I watched a documentary of his. He's from Brooklyn, actually. Grew up in the hood, grew up in a rough neighborhood called Brownsville. So it's funny because people were comparing his situation to Colin Kaepernick, and like these two guys couldn't be any different from each other. Like, Kaepernick was, despite being born in Milwaukee by a father that eventually I think was in prison or something like that, he was raised by an adopted family and moved to California and lived middle-class lifestyle. Okay. But with Brian Flores, he was raised by his parents and his four brothers, and his uncle introduced him to the game of football, and that's how he got into the sport. And eventually he got into a preparatory school that had a decent football program in Brooklyn, and that's how he got a start in football. So their lives couldn't be any different. Brian Flores, he grew up a city dude. Colin Kaepernick grew up a suburban dude. Like, there's your difference right there. And even based on Brian Flores' demeanor and character, it's like the dude doesn't come across as attention seeking. He's not boisterous. He's not obnoxious. He seems very direct, and he's a no nonsense type of dude, from what I could tell based on the interviews I've seen on ESPN and such. So what's all the controversy about, right? What's this is all about? So basically, this is him about getting fired from the Miami Dolphins, first of all. And then even after him getting fired, he tried to apply for a new position, especially at his hometown football team of the New York Giants. Now, you're a guy born in Brooklyn, and you get to coach your hometown city, one of their marquee football teams. New York has two, Giants and the Jets. So he gets a chance to coach in his home city, which is, if anybody was born in Brooklyn or anywhere in New York City, that's like a big time dream job, especially if you're into football, right? But unfortunately, he finds out he doesn't get that position. First of all, because his mentor, Bill Belichick, accidentally congratulates him, saying that, hey, man, congrats, you got the job. I'm proud of you. And Brian's like, are you sure about that? Really? I got the job? Are you sure? Because I never heard from the Giants. I never heard from their personnel saying I actually got the position. And it turns out Bill Belichick made a gaffe. Apparently he has contacts of not just Flores, but also Brian DeBole. And that's the person that the Giants hired. And funny enough, they have the exact same name, Brian. So it's like a major gaffe on Bill Belichick's part, thinking that he was congratulating DeBole when in reality he was congratulating Flores. Whoops. Oopsie. Right? So that's how he finds out. But that part of Brian Flores' allegation of racism in the hiring process kind of exposes the fallacy of the Rooney Rule. For those that don't know about the Rooney Rule, this was made by an American politician by the name of Dan Rooney. He's not alive anymore. He died about 4 years ago in 2017. No, 5, excuse me. So he is the son of Art Rooney Sr. Art Rooney Sr. is the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, the former owner. And of course, he's long dead too. And oddly enough, ever since the Rooney Rule has been in place, it's basically an affirmative action incentive so that the NFL can give minority people in the NFL, guys that aren't white, a chance to be a part of the head coaching hiring process. So they give these guys chances for interviews. So that way, if they have the matching qualifications, they can get a head coach job for an NFL team. So that's what the Rooney Rule was supposed to be for. But ever since its establishment for the past decade or so, hasn't really worked out in the long run. Because as it stands right now, in 2022, the only black head coach or minority head coach in the NFL, well, yeah, the only black coach. And then, isn't Ron Rivera still with the Redskins? No, not the Redskins. I shouldn't say that team. The Washington Commanders now. Isn't he still a head coach with them? And I believe he's Latino, Ron Rivera. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, Mike Tomlin is the only one that happens to be black that's still a head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's been there since 2007. And the way things are going with the Steelers, he might be on that team for another decade. Like, no matter what their record is, you know. He gets the Steelers in the playoffs, but man, they can never quite. They've been struggling ever since their last Super Bowl appearance, which was like, what year was that? 2009. Man, it's been a minute. You know, they have not been able to get back into that Super Bowl. They've had chances, man, but you know, the era of the Patriots, man, it's just they've always shut that window for Pittsburgh, always. But be as it may, Flores' case for alleged racism in the hiring process kind of has some merit because it's exposing that Rooney Rule. Like, dang, you guys put me on the interview process and then only to find out I never got the job. Sorry about that. I never got the position. It's like, well, dang, they didn't ask me to be a head coach for the Giants because I had the qualifications. They just kind of did it because of the Rooney Rule. Like, the NFL has to fill that quota. Okay, we got to have at least one guy that's non-white to interview, so that way we can kind of say, yeah, we did interview him, but we weren't really serious about him. And shout out to Larry K. This is a Miami Dolphins fan. He broke this down really good, and I'm gonna get into the Stephen Ross part momentarily. He broke it down really well on Miami Dolphins podcast called T-Phil or T-Fin. I'll post that stream in the description box if I remember. But he broke it down beautifully as to why Brian Flores felt the way he felt about kind of getting snubbed for that job. You know, it's not so much that he's attention seeking and he's trying to like be almost like a Kaepernick. Like that's just a bad comparison. Like there's a legitimate case that, he basically was just asked to be interviewed just for the sake of being interviewed due to him not being white. And not because he really does have the qualifications to be a head coach for the New York Giants. Now, even with Flores filing this lawsuit, he still did more interviews with the Saints being one, and then the other one being the Houston Texans. So he was still doing interview processes despite getting on television and making his case known. Now, let's break down the Miami Dolphins side of things. Now, this is the one that really got me questioning this whole thing. Like, wow, like they really got rid of him because he was disobeying the command of the owner, Stephen Ross. And this is so funny because Larry K, he was calling him Mr. Magoo the entire time. He was calling Stephen Ross Mr. Magoo because he's so old. Like, this man's over 80 years old, and he's still trying to dictate what's going on with the football team. And they haven't really made the playoffs since 2003, if I'm not mistaken. So they've been subpar and garbage all this time in the NFL. And Larry K has just been fed up with this man. So he just calls him Mr. Magoo every time he does a screw up with the organization. That just tripped me out. Mr. Magoo is like old cartoon with this old short looking man, and every time he loses his glasses, he can't find his glasses. He's like patting on the floor trying to get him. Like, that's that character. Mr. Magoo. Oh man. But anyway, so get this. So Mr. Magoo, Stephen Ross, allegedly was trying to get Brian Flores to tank, first off. Now, if this was basketball, if this was baseball, I can kind of see why teams would tank. It still doesn't make it right, because after all, fans are paying for a product to see the best of the best compete in their sport and give it 100%. So they say, right? Still doesn't make tanking right, but he was trying to get Brian Flores to tank the rest of the season so of course the Dolphins can get a high draft pick. So he can get a superstar player, right? Not to mention, at some point in the season, he benched Tua Tagovailoa. I think that's how you say his name. The guy that played at Alabama a while back. So Flores makes his necessary adjustments because the Dolphins, in the middle of this past season, their record was 1 win, 7 losses. Correct? 1 win, 7 losses. So since he made those adjustments and pretty much benched the quarterback, all of a sudden they end up winning 7 straight games. And then they finished the season with a record of 9 wins, 8 losses. So they were actually above 500 by the time the season ended. And I remember reading this on the Wikipedia. The Miami Dolphins 22 team, they set a record for losing 7 straight games and winning 7 straight games. No team has ever done that before in NFL history. Brian Flores managed to make that happen. And yet he loses his job. Make that make sense. Seriously, make that make sense. And here's another kicker. In 2019, when Brian Flores was first hired, Stephen Ross was trying to get him, along with Ross, to have a special meeting in a yacht with a prominent quarterback. I'll go ahead and say his name, Tom Brady, the king of all quarterbacks. They wanted Flores to meet up with Tom Brady about signing on to the Miami Dolphins, to make that sales pitch. Since, Brian Flores is very familiar with Tom Brady, being that he was coaching with the Patriots alongside Bill Belichick. So, since they couldn't make that work, obviously Brady didn't go to the Miami Dolphins. He went to the Buccaneers. And we see what happened with the Buccaneers. They ended up winning the Super Bowl the very next season. So even the king of quarterbacks said, nope, I don't think I'm going to Miami. Yep. So with the whole tanking controversy and even Stephen Ross making disparaging remarks to Brian Flores after he fired the guy because he didn't do what he wanted him to do, now I can see that as a more legitimate case going against not just the Dolphins owner, but the NFL at large for their flawed hiring processes as well as them tanking games. And then you had another coach, a former coach that happened to be black, Hugh Jackson, saying, yeah, the Cleveland Browns tried to get me to lose games deliberately, and they were paying me under the table to do it. Wow. That's more outrageous than the the racism allegations, really. Like, think about it. You're a fan. You're going to see the game live, or you're watching on TV. You want to see the best football out there, but you're not getting it because, there's some underhanded things going on with NFL teams not deliberately putting out their best effort with their players, and they're calling plays that are questioning out there when it comes to execution, basically trying to win the game. You're trying to get a first down, but you're making a run play on like a 3rd and 10 or something like that. You're not going to get the first down. Or you're trying to run the ball on a 4th and 5 at the goal line or something. instead of kicking a regular field goal. It's little stuff like that. It's like, dang, it's like, what are these people doing when it comes to the play calling, right? So now it makes you wonder. It really makes you wonder, like, are they really trying to give their best effort out there on the field, or are they trying to help certain teams get ahead for playoff time just so they can get a new set of players in order to try again and see if they can do better next time? It's very controversial. It really, truly is. So yeah, that's my analysis about the whole Brian Flores situation. If he can win this case or not, it's going to be tough. I say that much. I think he definitely has a more compelling case against that Miami Dolphins owner, because he really does come across as a rich scumbag, just based on what I've heard from Dolphins fans. Like, yeah, like the way he does things is like really selfish. So I can definitely understand that angle. Now the Giants and the Broncos allegations of, I didn't even touch about the Broncos. So he was in that interview with John Elway and somebody else. They say he was drunk. They were both drunk, and they weren't really fully engaged with the interview process, but Brian Flores kind of did it anyway. And this is like around the same year he was looking for a job before he signed to Miami. So that's what that was all about with the Broncos. But either way, I mean, tell me what you guys think about that, man. It's very suspect of how the NFL does business, racism or not. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments, man. It's an uphill battle for Brian Flores to try to win against the NFL, I would say. And I don't know if they're going to really change their ways in order to, make the most out of their product, which is football, in order to keep butts on the seats. So yeah, that's kind of my analysis. Check out that podcast. I'm going to try to put it in the description box. It was pretty eye-opening from Larry K. Shout out to that guy. Diehard Dolphins fans living in New Jersey. But anyway, that's going to be all. You tell me what you guys think, and I'm out of here. Later.